Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast, right here on capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode is once again brought to you by our friends at Galactic Comics and Collectibles at galacticcomicsandcollectibles.com. We welcome Saratoga Schaefer to the program to talk about their novel, Serial Killer Support Group, which is available at bookstores everywhere. We talked the book, the creation process, Saratoga's sober living, and so much more, as well as their upcoming novel, Traditional Wife, which is available next year. And we'll find out more about that in the future. But before you listen, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, all those places. You can rate, review, subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you find your podcasts. You can also find so much more information, opinions, reviews, and so much more over at capesandtights.com. But this is author Saratoga Schaefer talking Serial Killer Support Group. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, right? My migraine now makes me so I'm not going to be able to speak correctly through this whole thing. No, I'm glad you were able to take time out of your busy schedule to chat with us here about your book and so much more. And I truly am happy you're here at the podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Absolutely. You seem like you've been busy recently, huh?
I have definitely been busy recently. Yeah. The book came out a couple weeks ago, which has been exciting, and I've had launch events. But I'm also right in the middle of developmental edits for my next book, so I'm on deadline as well. And I also work full time, and I'm trying to renovate a house by the end of next month. So there's a lot happening. It's exciting, but stressful.
I mean, you guys all make it seem so easy, like it's being a published author is just the easiest thing in the world, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know. I feel like it backfires sometimes because people are like, "Oh my gosh, why'd this take so long?" And it's like because this is a whole journey and a lot goes into it, and
Yeah.
you just tend to see the highlight reel on social media. So
It's funny too, because it seems like, and I don't have a published novel, but like what it seems like is too, it seems like up to a certain point, you're writing, you're editing, you're doing all that stuff. And then all of a sudden there's like a slight lull before publication date. And then once publication date arrives, you're just like, you know, shit just hits the fan. You're just going, 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 going. And then it's like, cool, I'll get to rest a little bit. And then you're like, oh, I got to write. And then I got to release the next novel because there's never a point where you're like, you got to do that next thing. Because all of us as fans of yours are like, not only do we want the next big thing for you, we want you to be successful, but we want we want your next book. So like, I'm done with Serial Killer Support Group. Now I want Traditional Wife. Let's go.
I know I'm actually on the same wavelength where like I very much hop from project to project. So like in my mind, Serial Killer Support Group is like completely over, even though like I should be promoting it and it's out there, but I'm like, all right, on to the next one. What am I doing next? What am I writing next? Can we make publishing move faster to help my need to like produce things all the time? No, we can't. So there's a lot of hurry up and wait in this industry,
Yes.
which has been a very fun challenge in learning how to be patient and mindful, which is
Yeah.
a little bit of a struggle, but I'm
Yeah.
getting a little better at it.
I mean, so speaking of that, so what steered you towards? I mean, you're an avid reader. You like to read novels as well. But like, what steered you to wanting to write a novel in the first place? Now that you've been into it and going, this is a crazy thing to do. What made you think about doing this crazy thing?
Yeah. Well, if we go all the way back, I started writing or telling stories when I was a kid. I'm dyslexic, so I read kind of late. And once I did sort of figure it out and made it make sense for my brain, I could not be stopped. And I started doing my own stuff. I went to a public school in Brooklyn, and they were very into creative writing. So I did a lot of creative short stories. They had like a poetry magazine they would do every year. So I started with poetry, and that's kind of always been like a through line for me. And then I wrote my first novel, I guess you could call it, when I was in middle school about a dragon that murdered another dragon. And that was kind of like my first foray into that. And then I didn't really seriously start thinking about sitting down and writing a novel and being like, I'm going to try to get this published until after college.
Mhm.
And then that was when that sort of journey started. And then that was a very long process, because Serial Killer Support Group is not the first book I've
Yeah.
written. It's like the seventh book I've written. That just happened to be the one that finally got published. So it's always been there, but I got more serious about it when I was older, and especially after I got sober.
Hmm. Oh yeah, that would make sense too. There, I mean, there's a lot more. Yeah, I don't know. It seems like there's the similar journey, but different. Similar steps you take with different journey, I would say, for a lot of authors that are out there. I mean, do you think these other, say, six novels that you have there are ones that one day might see the light of day, or is it just basically like that was my warm up run, and now from here on out, I'm going to write new novels?
Yeah, I think some of them were sort of novels that had to be written just for me to figure out how to write a novel and to
Mm-hmm.
understand, technique and skill and just how to do it and how to edit.
Hmm.
There are a few of them that I would like to return to one day. I tend to be very forward focused though, so I have trouble going back and being like, oh, I'll play around with this old one. I'm like, no, I want the fresh new thing and I want to create something that I want right now.
Yep.
So I have kind of played around with a few older pieces, but in general, I'm usually looking for the next
Yeah.
thing, but
Well,
never say never. So
when you're that, that New York Times best-selling author years from now, and they have a collection of stories that you have unreleased because you're trying to work on the next thing and so on and so forth, that's when some of these might come out, right?
yeah, we'll see. I mean, even just from Serial Killer to the book I wrote now, I was like, oh, Serial Killer Support Group is not at the same level of writing as this new book. And like, so I'm a little scared to look at the older books and be like, oh God, this is trash.
Well, I recently talked to a guy named Chris Conrad who is a comic book writer, and he wrote the book that just recently came out. His comic book that just recently came out was one that he wrote in high school. Like a comic
Oh
book that
wow.
the story itself was written in high school. Obviously, it has had iterations and changes and things like that over the years. But now he's like in his 30s, and he's like, yeah, finally, this story that I wrote in high school is actually coming out. So I want the or the dragon murdering a dragon story to eventually come out at Saratoga.
Yeah,
That's
that
what I
I
want.
mean, I would not say no to that. I mean, maybe that's something I do down the road. It's handwritten in a composition notebook, so a lot would have to change, but that would be fun to kind of revisit that.
That would be great. And so you had a journey, and this is where it's going with serial killer support group. Which, first of all, the title alone, I think, is what draws a lot of people in. There's definitely something about titles that do something. Something's Killing the Children is a comic book series by James Tynion that just like drives people to the actual series. This is the same similar thing. Obviously, you've had other horror thriller novels that have similar titles that have drawn people in as well. But this is like one of those things that I honestly think I stumbled upon it on my NetGalley. So I was on NetGalley, and every day I go on there and I just check to see what novels are out there. And a lot of them I pass over because either I'm a designer by trade, so either the cover doesn't draw me in, or the title's just like I passed over it because the title was just something that was so ambiguous or whatever. But this one, like both the cover itself and the title, made me go, I need to know more about this book. And I took a chance on it, and I was so happy I did. I was so happy I did. And so I think that both the title and the cover, don't judge a book by its cover, but let's be honest, that cover and the title is definitely going to draw people towards this novel for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with how that all turned out. My publisher has been really awesome about it because, sometimes as an author, you don't get a ton of control, so you don't get control over your cover or your title. But I think they immediately saw maybe the benefit of keeping a title called Serial Killer Support
Support
Group.
group.
And they also were really collaborative with me with the cover as well. And I had a very specific sort of style in mind. I asked for something that was red and black and white,
Mm.
and I wanted something graphic. I did not want sort of like the vague profile of a woman in darkness looking off into the distance. Like I had something in my mind, and
Yeah.
they like completely were able to bring that out. And so I love it. I love the title. I love the cover. And that's been really exciting is seeing people kind of like connect with that because that's one of my favorite parts. So it's very cool to be like, have this validation of other people
Mhm.
being like, yeah, this is really awesome. And it popped out at me.
And being a new author, I think that's one of those things that getting this, new author to people obviously you've been she's been writing for a little while, but like your first book that's out there like this is the cover does draw. Someone goes to a Barnes and Noble and sees the cover, sees the title. It's like there's a line of things to do. You see the title in the cover, then you read the description and so on. So we read the plot, you read the summary about what's going on in the book. So there is a line that people do. People don't obviously just pick up a book and start reading the middle of a book to say, oh,
Yeah.
this is a pretty well written book. Like there's a line of things that people do, and so then you read the plot of what's going on inside this novel. I mean, what is your elevator pitch to people if they don't know what serial killer support group is?
Yeah, I mean, so the great thing about the title is that like that's
It
the
pretty
pitch.
much explains it. Yeah.
It's yes, but usually I'll just tell people it's about a woman who infiltrates a support group for serial killers in order to figure out who might have killed her younger sister. And that's generally my elevator pitch, and then I just say it's exactly what it sounds like.
Well, it's fun in the sense that I'm a big fan of books that are like straightforward, and then there's a little bit of a oddness to it or a different thing to it that makes it a little bit not believable in the sense that like a serial killers are real out there. Support groups are real. The idea that there's a support group for serial killers out there is I want there to be, honestly. Like, after reading this novel, I kind of like want to be like, oh yeah, I definitely want this to be a real thing. But that steps me out of the element into more, this is definitely fiction in that sense that, but still you kept it grounded in a sense that it could be real. Like if it was real, this is what it would be kind of be like. And I love that. I thought it was so much fun to like, it made me want to read it and not just be like, the thrilling aspect of it, wanting to know what happens next, but really just wanted to be like, what happens if there was a serial killer support group? And I think you blended that all well together. And I think that's one of those things that people are going to love and gravitate towards, in my opinion, is that idea that it's like a what if almost, in the same sense that it's like a great thrilling story, but it's like a what if this really was a thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, part of what I wanted to capture there was almost that like thick slice of life of that what if. Like, yes, I want it to be exciting and fast paced, but I also want to capture what that would be like to sit in one of those meetings and what it might look like and what it might sound like and how disturbing that would be, and have that be a really integrated part of the story. So, I mean, I do think, I know sometimes people, that could be a criticism of like,
Mm.
this isn't believable, it couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And I get that, but also most fiction has some
Yes.
layer of that somewhere, and it's a book. And I think the cover and the title makes it very clear what you're going into. Like you're
Yes.
going into something that maybe is a little like tongue in cheek and
Yeah.
not 100% believable. And I think shelving that aspect of it and just enjoying it for the story that it is how you're gonna really get the most out of this book.
I mean, and there's also this. I read. I live in the genre of thriller, horror, gross stuff, things that kind of make you scared, want to have the lights on, things like that. And I'll tell you right now, there is a difference between a novel that you can know that's a little out there in the sense of, like I said, tongue in cheek to that point, that makes it so it's a little bit more enjoyable in the sense that you can just sit down and read it. And then there's the other
Mhm.
side of things where you're like scared and you need the lights on and you hear a creak and you're freaked out and that kind of thing. And sometimes that's not as enjoyable. Sometimes it's like it's something to read and the story could be really good. But sometimes you're like, I'm so freaked out about this book that or this novel or this movie or this TV show that makes it less enjoyable. It's a hot wing versus a super hot wing where it's like you like the flavor, but sometimes it's just unbearable. And that's just something that serial killer support group is in that, because it's in that slight tongue in cheek unbelievable part of it made it go, I can just enjoy this for the story that it is, and I don't have to worry about it actually being real.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like entertaining enough where you're like, oh my gosh, what if this did exist? But there's not that like thick horror of like, oh, it does exist and we're examining it and like we're gonna get real deep into the darkest parts of it where like I play with that a little, but like
Yeah.
I hope this doesn't exist in real life. I don't
Well,
ever want to know.
well, who's to say? I mean, who's out there saying this doesn't exist? You wouldn't know, right? You wouldn't know if this
Yeah.
actual group exists unless you were a serial killer or you were as smart as your protagonist was in this book to actually get into one and to infiltrate one. But yeah, I think it's like one of those things that like you don't know. Let's be honest, I would
Right.
never know.
Right.
I mean, we don't really know about serial killers until after they're caught, mainly. And so, like, why would you know about a support group or not until we figured out by one? That's gonna be one of those like headline things where, like, years and years and years down the road, was like Saratoga was right, and they'll find one and be like, and then they'll be investigating you, like, did you know
I
something?
know. Yeah. I mean, a writer's Google search is already a whole
Yeah.
mess, and they would just like immediately arrest me. It would just be a big problem.
Yeah, it's a whole issue there. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
speaking of that, I mean, you mentioned a little bit in this discussion so far about things, but where did you like where did this like spin off from? Like, did you have an idea years and years and years ago that this was something, or did I mean, is there influence from other things that are out there? Like, what makes you want to write a book about serial killers and what their problems are?
Yeah. Well, a couple of years ago, I was reading a book or an article or something like that, and there was a throwaway line about how there aren't support groups for murderers that we know of.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the trigger for me of like, well, what if there were? And
Hmm.
what if specifically there was a support group for serial killers? And I tend to be a kind of a high concept thinker, so I'll start with that big picture and then kind of find the story from there. So that was the jumping off point for me. And then the rest of it kind of just naturally fell into place as I started to think about what that would look like and how characters were interact with each other and why someone who wasn't a serial killer would be able to get into something like that. So that was kind of the jumping off point. And the serial killer, I guess, concept in itself is something that I've always been, I guess, peripherally interested in. I wouldn't consider myself one of those like true crime
Hmm.
aficionados who's constantly consuming stuff like that and is really, really engaged with it. But the psychology behind it, I find fascinating both from like a serial killer and someone who consumes that content. I think
Hmm.
is very, very interesting. So that was also part of what I was thinking about when I was drafting and when I was trying to figure out, okay, what would a story like this look
Hmm.
like?
Oh, and it's a great. I'll tell you right now, if anybody wants a little bit of insight into how things move along in your life in these books and things like that, your Instagram is a great place to be. I will tell you that right now. I think it's authentic, and that's what it's well designed, well done. Like, you do a good job with it in the first place, but like, it's authentic. Like, seeing your reaction to your cover reveal, seeing your reaction to when you found out the news that you would be published, have a published novel and things like that. All that stuff is just, it's fascinating to watch. It makes me feel connected to you in a level that someone else, some other authors out there, feel like a little distant or shy away from. I mean, social media is a cesspool as it is, but you do have your social media set up in a way where you have to be following you, I believe, right, to get to comment and things like that, which helps a little bit on that side of weeding people out. If they're gonna at least if they're gonna crap on things, at least make them follow you so your followers go up, right? I
Correct.
mean, that's the theory. No, no, but I was saying it's authentic, and I think that's what's great about it. But the other part of that is that Sierra, is that her name, Sierra?
Syra.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Syra. Okay, Syra is sober in this book, and that is a journey in a life that you live right now as well in your life, and so that's also on there, which is a great thing. How important was it that you made your protagonist, your main character, sober in this book? Whereas it's not seen that often in this genre, thriller horror. What was really important about that to you?
Yeah, it was very important. I so kind of going back to the social media thing, I started out in the social media sobriety space. I kind of became, I guess you would call it like a micro influencer or whatever. I don't love the idea of influencers, but if you're going to be an
Yeah,
influencer, I think doing it for an alcohol-free
yeah,
lifestyle is an awesome thing to
yeah.
do. So that was my first real sort of like relationship with social media and how I sort of learned to put myself out there like that and be honest and show that sort of authentic side of myself because
Hmm.
I think sobriety still to this day has a little bit of like that taboo there of like, well, you shouldn't talk about that and that's private, keep it to yourself. And that of course is one of the reasons why we have a lot of alcohol misuse in our society.
Hmm.
So knowing that and knowing that I had this really amazing community online of people and they were all mostly aware because at the same time I was posting about my sobriety, I was posting about writing and about this dream I had to like eventually be a traditionally published author and all of that. So when I was writing this, I've had other sober characters or characters who, as I was going through my own process, who are clearly also struggling with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So when I wrote this, it was a few years into my sobriety, and I wanted to represent a version of sobriety that I don't feel we see too often, especially in genre fiction. So Syra, for example, she doesn't call herself an alcoholic. She doesn't go to AA. She's never been to rehab. She just identified some drinking patterns and habits in herself that she didn't like. And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, I'm quitting. And that I think is really important, A, for representation for people to see, to be able
Mm-hmm.
to see themselves maybe in a book or even in TV or film or whatever that maybe isn't always there.
Mm-hmm.
And then also to just have a version of sobriety that is maybe a little bit more accessible or is something that people are not used to seeing, because I think especially in genre fiction, we tend to see one of two things. One, you see the unreliable narrator. She's usually a white cis woman who is blacking out every night and has clearly a drinking problem, but it's
Mm-hmm.
never really addressed. And it's just there to sort of be a plot device. Or you have like the grizzled old man detective, and he's like in AA and he's still struggling with his sobriety on and off or whatever. And I kind of feel like there's not really anything in between
Mm-hmm.
that. And Syra was supposed to be a representation of that gray space and of that spectrum of sobriety, because it's not just AA or nothing, it's not just alcoholic or nothing. There's a lot to sort of be aware of in
Mm-hmm.
that space. So I was very intentional about that whole crafting of her character and wanting that to be realistic and then also reflective of some of my own experiences.
Well, I mean, you write what you know, in a
Mhm.
sense. Like, I think it's the best thing. Why is there a lot of novels from authors about authors? It's because, like, if you live
Right.
in that space all the time, it's like, well, I guess I'm gonna talk about a guy who's out in the woods somewhere writing a novel and then gets attacked.
Sure.
Makes sense to do that. And so you write what you know in that sense. I will say, I love the fact that it's present. But you didn't write a serial killer sober story, if that makes any sense. Like, to some
Yes.
people out there whom that may, I hate to say, may turn off, the fact that it's a sober character is the fact that, I mean, let's be honest, there's a bunch of books probably about sober characters where they just don't talk about alcohol. But like, there's these characters were just purposefully done this way, but also not in the way that you're like, it's like, oh my God, I get it, you're sober, that kind of thing in the book.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great way of doing it. There's stories. I mean, one of the things that I've always respected about Stephen Graham Jones is Stephen putting his Native American culture in the book, but not to the point where you're like he's trying to force it. It's like I'm just writing. This is the story about my history and my family and my lineage, and you believe in that, and you go, okay, this is cool. Same thing here. I feel like when you get to know and you're reading this, and you're like, oh, I could see, Saratoga's writing something that they believe in and that they live. It makes a little bit more sense, to my opinion, and it's a nice balance in there. It's not overwhelming, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And that was also intentional in the same way that I deal with Syra's queerness as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
I went into it with that same, like, I did not set out to write a book about a queer character. I did not set out to write a book about a sober character. It's just that this character who's going through this crazy thing happens to be queer and sober.
yes,
And it's this idea of making it more normative and
hmm,
normalized, and it's not such, it doesn't have to be such a big deal. If
no,
it is a big deal, that's great and I support that too, but I also wanted to sort of reflect the way I live within both of those things
hmm,
and have that relate to me in a way where, like, I wish that I, when I was younger, saw more characters like this or were, kind of along those lines in genre fiction, because that's something that I think genre fiction can lack
hmm,
sometimes. So that was also very intentional in going in, of being like, I'm going to add these things to her character, but I don't want it to be her identity.
hmm,
It's just part of who she is.
yep. And I respect that. And I respect the fact that also that like, it changed something. It made a little bit something different for me. And like I said, in a person who reads a lot of genre fiction, like it has that it changes things up a little bit. It gives me a little bit of different pace in something. And you know, if people listen to this podcast and people know, my day job is actually working for a brewery. So there, do full disclosure there. I do work for a brewery as a designer. But I will say I love the your journey. I love seeing this online because there is a place for this. And I think that one of the things I related to someone the other day in the office about not just you, but other people who live vibrantly sober on the internet, which is a great thing, is why can't you do that? Why is it frowned upon? Why is it a taboo subject for you? For the same reason that we have people who follow our Instagram as a brewery that post pictures of them drinking a new beer or loving a new beer or things like that. Like that's respected and thumbed up and liked and oh I love
Mhm.
that stuff, but then when you do the opposite side of that thing is it's more of a taboo thing about how I'm proud to be sober and these people are proud to drink alcohol. It's like one of those weird things and I don't understand it and I was very happy to see that and then see that it was represented in your book as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from perhaps individuals' own relationships
Yes,
with
yes.
alcohol and
Alcohol, yeah.
drinking because,
Mm,
generally when, and since I was in that sober online space for years and years,
yeah,
I've seen kind of all of it and I've
yeah,
had all of the responses and that going back to what you said earlier, that's
yeah,
part of why I have my comments limited because
yeah.
I used to get some really intense, hateful things on my page. But I think it's more of like a little bit of a defensive
Mhm,
mechanism. Like my if my sobriety is upsetting you, or if my sobriety makes you feel like I'm judging you, then I think that's something you need to
mhm,
maybe personally look at because me just making the best, healthiest choice for myself should not have any bearing on your life whatsoever. Like, and if it does, that's a clue that maybe
mhm.
you need to check in with yourself there.
And you're also one of those things that in the same sense I'm trying to as a person post a picture of your book on the internet to be like you should read this book in the same sense that you're doing that with sobriety as well and the idea that maybe someone will see this and pick up my book or like it's like or a book in general if I recommend a book I'm like hey you really should read this book out by so and so and someone's like cool I'll go pick it up maybe one day your same side of the other side of that would be like, oh, I am sober X number of days, and someone might go, well, maybe I should look into this. So like, I don't. It's a weird space to be in. For that for the internet in general, right now it's a like I said it's a hard place to navigate in as a whole. But yeah, I said I wanted to know why, and that makes sense. You're right. People have to look inwards a little bit to get why they have a problem with you being so open about it. It does seem obvious, but maybe it doesn't strike as obvious to some people. But yeah, I love, like I said, I love seeing that, and I have respect for everybody. I chose to be in this industry. I'm a designer. I do, respect alcohol in the sense that there is a place where there's too far and too much and all that stuff. But I respect the people who are open about it on the other side of it too. And we have a hop water that we make that's specifically designed for the people who was a big fan of our beverages before and then decided that their lifestyle didn't believe in that. So we're like, well, we still love those people. We respect those people. We love the fact that they were once our customers buying our stuffs and going to our bar. Here's an option for you that, uses the same hops and the same water and all that stuff, but it's zero alcohol and alcohol free. We also deal with a lot of people who are in fitness and love to bike and all that stuff. And it's like, here's the deal. You can't do that well if you were drinking alcohol on a regular basis. So yeah, I was just like, I would love to. I thought when I discovered that you were sober on that too, and I was like, oh, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this on the podcast as well, and the fact that I've done beers both of the podcast with guests before. We actually have done beers with them, like collaboration beers, but also the idea that I love the idea that you're sober. And do you? Do you look for I see when you're at things do you still enjoy like drinking a wine that's non-alcoholic or is that something you try to shy away from? This is just a generic question. I don't I just something that spurred on when I was talking.
Yeah. You mentioned hop water. I love
Yeah.
hop waters. I
Okay.
love that you guys make that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I For the most part, I love having alternative like NA drinks and things that I mean, it's just so boring to go to an event or a
Yes.
bar or whatever. And like the thing they have available for me is like water or lukewarm soda. Like I do
Here,
not
have a
need
polar
that.
seltzer.
I do love seltzer. Like I will
Yeah,
always
yeah,
come back to seltzer, but it's nice to have. And I think
yes.
with the rise of like wellness and sobriety being a little bit more mainstream, it's been wonderful to see more mocktails and zero proof things on menus. All these brands coming out with non-alcoholic beer is amazing. I love that. Personally, the only things I tend to stay away from are non-alcoholic red wines,
Mhm.
and I'm not a huge like spirit-free spirit person. Like I don't really do any of those. I'll have it if it's in like a nice bar and there's like something mixed with it and it's like a classy mocktail. I'll do that, but I do tend to avoid like the stuff that I feel like might be triggering.
Yeah,
And that's just something I've personally learned throughout my journey and my process. And like every person is different. And I know people who don't touch any of the
yeah.
alternative things at all because it's just too triggering. And that's totally valid too. So it's one of those things where it's like each person is different and whatever works for you, as long as it, keeps you in the path that you're on, go for it. So I mean, I love it. I love having all these options. It's great.
I love how you said that the alcohol-free spirits that they've created or hair in my mouth. Alcohol free spirits. It's like it's great. I've always been a person who was like I didn't like other than the fact that it's intoxicating. Like that was what I was actually looking for. I don't drink. I work for a brewery and I don't drink that often as it is as it is
Mhm.
now. I have two young kids and a family to raise, so it's one of those things that it does take away from that. As well as my mother-in-law and father-in-law both sober, and so like obviously family functions and things like that, we just don't drink at because of that. It makes it an easy space for you to go. I don't need to drink here. But I've always hated the taste of alcohol, like actual alcohol. So to me, I'm like, why would I, or like tequila or any of these things? I'm like, why would I have a drink that has that? Why don't I just have it minus the tequila? Like, why can't I just drink it that way? And I understand there's flavors and people like that and so on and so forth. But yeah, my mother and father-in-law, they are sober and they enjoy a hot water. And my wife was wondering whether or not that would be triggering in a sense and so on and so forth. But they drink it no problem and they have no issue with it either. Everybody's different in that sense and everybody makes their own decisions and you really should know, like you mentioned, what's best for yourself. Like obviously, but I also understand like if you go to a party and someone's like, "Would you like an alcoholic beverage?" and you say no, you shouldn't be like, "Well, how come?" and then bring that whole
Right,
part into it either. Let someone just say no. I can just say no as someone who does drink alcohol. I have every right to.
right.
I won't be yelled at. No one will question me, but because you're sober, someone will question you.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. It's like all a process that you have to learn. And like so like the first year of my sobriety too, like I was very careful and I avoided all that stuff. Like
Yeah.
I didn't try any of the NA drinks. I didn't, I basically just drank a ton of seltzer and that was it. And then as I felt better and felt more confident, I was like, all right, like let me try this or let me see what that works. And
Mhm.
that helped me kind of like figure out where my boundaries were. So it's all just like a learning process, and you are going to get those people who are like, well, why? And like, can't you just have one?
Yeah,
And like,
exactly. Yep.
who are like personally affronted by you being like, no, thanks, I'm not drinking. And, everyone deals with that differently. But I mean, I, I very early on, because I was, saying it online very loud and
Yeah.
proudly, I just started doing that in real life too. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. If you have a problem with this, like that's on you. And
Well,
I wish you the best.
I don't drink mixed drinks. So if someone gonna question, I don't drink mixed drinks. So like I'm a beer drinker. So you're gonna villainize me because I don't drink mixed drinks? No, but you would villainize me if I just didn't drink alcohol in the first place. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But is this something that now, like obviously you said, like you mentioned, having a queer character, having a sober character. Is this something that now? Is if it fits the story moving forward, it might work, or is this something that you'll try to actually shoehorn in, but put into stories?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I will never be the type to shoehorn something in for like the sake. Obviously, I want representation in my work, but I'm not gonna put something in there that doesn't work for the
Yeah,
story for the sake of representation because I feel like that's not being authentic to that representation. Um, so in general, I love writing stuff with queer characters. I'm not a big romance person, but if there is romance in my books, it's almost always sapphic. Like
Mhm.
I'm not super interested in
Yes.
male female romance.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, in general, that kind of stuff tends to crop up in my work, but I will not sort of put it in there for no reason, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like the next book I have coming out, there is not a queer character in there because it didn't really make sense for the story. And I also wanted to, when you're dealing with underrepresented people and communities, you also want to be careful with how you're using that
Hmm.
in your book, and you don't want it to come across in a way that could be harmful. So that was
Hmm.
another reason why it was like, okay, it doesn't make sense for the story. And I also feel like if I put it in this story, it could potentially be harmful. So I'm not going to do that. So it's going to be like a project by project basis. But in general, yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in always having representation in my work, but I'm not going to do it in a way that is going to be hurtful or in a way that just like doesn't make sense for the story.
Which is great to hear because I mean, let's be honest, your goal is to put the best possible story onto a page, and that's if
Mhm.
that includes both those, titles of sorts, that a queer character or a sober character, then great, it fits, it's awesome. But if it doesn't, then that's not the best possible story. Then why would you put the book out in that sense? That it's not the
Right.
best possible story, then it's not going to be great for you. So, Traditional Wife is the book you're working on right now, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
And that is no release date yet. That's
Not
public.
yet. Yeah, not that's public.
Okay.
It's looking like, I mean, it's definitely going to be next year.
Okay.
I'm guessing it'll be around this time
Mhm.
next year, but we'll see what the official date is once I have it.
That's awesome. And then and do you have a little bit of an idea? Are you telling people what that's about yet, or is it just the title right now?
Yeah, so it's about, as you might have guessed from the title, so it's called Traditional Wife, and it's about a trad wife influencer. And if anyone who's not aware of what that is, it's sort of like this newish rise of usually younger social media affluent women who are sort of obsessed with staying home and being homemakers and homesteaders. And it's a return to quote unquote traditional values, especially in relationships. So they stay home, they cook, they clean, they take care of the kids. So the premise of this story is a trad wife influencer essentially has a demon baby. And that's sort of the plot.
That's awesome.
So it's very exciting. I love this book and I'm very, very excited for people to read it. I think it's going to upset some people, but also in like the best possible way. And
Yeah.
I think it's something, especially now, especially in the United States, that some people need to read. So,
Hmm. Yes. It's a weird world we live in right now to the point where I don't understand why I doom scroll on Instagram and things like that. For example, like I just don't get it. But there's sometimes where I'm just like, these people are just put things on the internet. They don't care what people think about or hope that people care about. I just don't understand it. To me, I'm like, I keep going, oh, I should really post something on Instagram, like on my personal Instagram. I'm like, but what would I post? I don't understand. Like, it was a cute picture of my son in his underwear yesterday with sunglasses on, but I'm like, I don't want to put that. I shared it with some family members, but that's okay. Like, cool,
mhm.
I'm done. I don't need everybody else to see this photo. If someone asks, hey, is there something stupid your kid did? I'd be like, hey, look at this. But like, other than that, I'm like, I don't need to put it out there. Like, we had an
Yeah,
offer accepted on our new house a month ago, or yeah, 3 weeks ago, and I put that up there, offer accepted, and that was it. It was a black picture, black screen with offer accepted on it, and that was it. And I'm like, okay, I guess that's my social media right now. But yeah, mixing in that social media aspect of it is probably going to be something we see more often than not in the future. And I'm glad you're doing it on this side of it. Thanks to it. It sounds phenomenal. I mean, if I liked it anywhere like I like serial killer support group, I'm going to be pumped and I hope people do that. So, but serial killer support group is available now though. That's the big thing, right? I mean, you can get that now on the
yes,
shelves.
yes,
Is
you
it
can get that
surreal?
now.
Is it surreal walking into a store and seeing it on the shelf?
Yeah, it's very weird. And I've been getting like from, people online and then my
Yeah.
friends and my family, I'm getting texts of them finding it in the wild and seeing it in different places. The thing that's like really mind-blowing is seeing it out next to other authors who I've like read or admired for years and like having my book
Hmm.
touch like a Tana French book is crazy to me and is just like mind blowing. So that part has been probably one of like the coolest things. But yeah, it's very surreal. It's still kind of hard to believe. Like I kind of feel like it's just a big prank and everyone's like kind of in on it. And
We're all in on it.
they all like, yeah, they all bought like copies from, a Kinko's or whatever, and they're just like putting it in places and sending it to me and being like, look at your book. It's very weird.
That would be amazing if you could like 100% tell that it was just a photocopy on the page, or like someone like caped it to another book. You're like, look at this.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like I said, I found it surreal for some people, and seeing, like I said, your honesty and your transparency of sorts on Instagram and on social media of being excited about this, it rejuvenates and puts a skip in other people's steps, like myself, honestly, of what to do and be proud of what you do and be happy with your successes in your lives. And I think that's one of those things that seeing your journey and going back on your Instagram and seeing these videos of you like being all excited about things is it's great. And I think that makes me want to, follow you along with you some more and so on and so forth. And this is not, I mean, I will say, there is a quote on the back from my review of your book that has nothing to do with how excited I am about this book. I've been lucky enough to have a few. It's Bloodshot from Blackstone Publishing has one too, but like my first was on a Josh Winning book, and I thought it made my life to have that on the back of there, and then it continues on with books that I really enjoy, like Serial Killer Support Group. So I'm excited for people to read it. You can grab it at your bookstores everywhere. I recommend checking out like bookshop.org if you're ordering it online, because local bookstores get a cut of that. If you do buy it through our website, I get a small portion of that, which helps further the cause of doing the podcast and so on and so forth. So I appreciate that if you do buy it through there, but buy it anywhere. And here's the deal. I'll say this over and over again. You may not want to buy it from massive conglomerate websites, but if you choose between buying it or not buying it because of that, I tend to stay on the side of buying it. Like that's a big thing to me. And if you can't afford it, go to local library and ask them to grab it, because that's huge for both people reading it, but also for you guys as authors, and as the publisher knows, the more copies there are in libraries, the better it is for you.
Yes, definitely. And I'll also say it's available on all formats. So you can get it hardback, paperback, ebook, or audiobook. The audiobook is really awesome too. So any way you like to consume your books, I have an available option for you.
That is exactly. I mean, and that's Libro FM is a good spot. I don't know if it's on there or not. Serial Killer Support Group. I'm looking it up right now. I believe it is. But yes, it is. It is. Who's the Abby Craden and Timothy Andrés Pabon? I don't know people's names. I should have looked it up ahead of time and found out the pronunciation before I said it on here. But no, it's only 9 hours too. That's not too bad, And I know a lot of people who read it like 1.5, 2 times. So that takes like you'll do it in a couple days just to take it in for reading it. But yeah, I'm super pumped for you, and like I said, I feel like I've lived this journey along with you ever since I've started following and so on and so forth. So I'm looking forward to what happens with Traditional Wife and so on. But grab Serial Killer Support Group at bookstores everywhere and support Saratoga and their journey as an author. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting the book with me.
Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.